Welcome to the Professional Women's Wellness Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Peggy Gleason, creator of the Mindful Eating Approach, where I help professional women and business owners with a tailored path to weight loss and self-confidence without the stress of restrictive diets, time-consuming exercise regimes, or medications. I help you transform your eating habits to enhance all areas of your wellness, and we always offer inspiration, motivation, and education with amazing gifts. Hi, everyone. I am pleased to introduce Dr. Zelda Okia, also referred to as Dr. Z. Oh, she's amazing. She's a she's a physician turned life coach whose inspiring journey highlights the power of transformation. Born in Uganda and raised in the United States, she achieved professional success as a forensic pathologist, but struggled with her own health and weight. Through life coaching, she not only lost 30 pounds, but she discovered lasting wellness. Today, Dr. Z helps clients move from overwhelm to balance, focusing on sustainable weight loss, mental clarity, and fitness. She reminds us that self-care is a foundation for caring for others, which is so true. I so agree with that. And so please, everyone, welcome Dr. Z. And oh my gosh, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I would like, you're welcome. I'd love to, I'm sure all the viewers and listeners are kind of curious how you went from forensic. I mean, that's like that's, I was just saying, I'm always intrigued at that. And you went from that to this. So give us a little bit of your background and tell us how that happened.
Yeah, I know it sounds, I even say I transitioned from death into life. It's really, death is a part of life. And really what it was is back in 2017, which I became a forensic pathologist in 2008. So I was doing hospital pathology. And then that was the economic downturn. Mm-hmm. Everybody remembers that, 2008. And so I didn't want to move out of my city. And there just so happened that there was an opening at the medical examiner's office. So yes, I had to go back and retrain, but I could stay put. And that's really what I wanted. So I did that. At the time, I didn't realize how different it was going to be than doing hospital pathology. But what really happened, I think what really changed for me in terms of becoming a life coach, obviously I had my own health issues, overweight, overwhelm, with my particular work schedule. And what happened was in 2017, when we started to see a lot of overdose deaths. And I work in the wealthiest county in Wisconsin. And so, especially for me as a Black woman, I trained in Milwaukee. So we had a lot of young African Americans who were dying by homicide. And so then to go to this wealthy county, I didn't see that. But it struck me that it was young people still dying of a drug overdose, drug related. And so Milwaukee was drug related too.
Yeah.
But the other side of the puzzle, right? They always go together. But anyway, that's another story. It's another social story. But
yes,
I thought it was interesting for me because I'm like, man, these kids have everything. And not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them, the parents are wealthy, working two jobs. So I started to see maybe there's that loss of the love or just the family connections and connectivity that when you are wealthy or when you are striving to give your kids the best life, it's easy to lose sight of that emotional component too. And so seeing that and kind of the confusion or maybe wanting to dig deeper and understand that side of things with my own issues that I was having as somebody I was well to do. I had a great job, and yet I wasn't completely fulfilled. And so looking at what are the connections here? What is really happening with you as a human, as a human being, and as I'm experiencing this in other people. So, yeah. I don't know. Does that make sense? I'm kind of all over the place.
It makes perfect sense, because most of us that go into any kind of coaching really are very introspective, and we look at what would we need to be well. And then once we discover it, we can't wait to share it with everybody else. So it does make sense to me. It does make sense.
Thank you.
So you went into life coaching, and you said you had personal challenges with your health yourself. So tell us what happened. How did that transition happen?
Yeah. So my mother died at 52, and she died from breast cancer. And so I started my screening in my 30s. Well, at 40, how old was I? 2015. In 2015, then I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that was a wake-up call. And one thing that really touched me was when my mother was diagnosed, she was living in Africa. My mother was from Bernice, Louisiana. It was a small town in Bernice, in Louisiana. And she met my father at Indiana University. They were both in grad school. And she moved back to Uganda with my dad. And that's where I was born. My brother and sister were both born in Bloomington, Indiana, actually. But my mother was obviously in Africa, far, far away from her family, and was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she had a mastectomy, she had surgery, she had lymph nodes removed, she had radiation. And thank God I didn't need the chemotherapy, but I did have radiation therapy. And so going through that, and I was married at the time, so not yet married, but I did have my significant other, who's now my husband, So, I mean, I had him there. My parents came up to visit, but it was still some days after my treatment, I would go and I would just sit and I would cry, and I'd be like, wow, like my mother went through this alone. I mean, and my father was there, and we were little though. I mean, how did we know what was happening? And so I can just imagine the emotional turbulence that she went through. But anyway, that aside, it's always kind of emotional for me. But I remember I wanted to go to a naturopathic doctor because I knew what my mother went through. She actually had her treatments my mother survived for 17 years, and then it returned. So that's one thing too I want to say, like breast cancer, once you have breast cancer, yeah, you got to watch it because it'll come back. And unfortunately, it'll come back with a vengeance. But she went another 5 more years. But she was getting treatment at Zion hospitals in Illinois. We were in Alabama at the time, but she was getting treatment there. And one thing I remember was they had a more holistic approach. So she read the books of Bernie Siegel. He wrote a lot about how people, based on where your cancer is, like people with breast cancer have to get something off their chest. And I remember she would draw, and they included a lot of journal and art and all of that. So I said, I want more of that. So I did go and see a holistic doctor, and he was naturopath. Sorry, I went to see a naturopath, and he's the one that was saying, about sugar. And really watching your diet, because he said cancer cells thrive on sugar. And so that was really where I started to be like, I need to start really paying attention to what I'm eating, what I'm putting into my body. And then that was 2015, actually. And it was 3 years later that I found my coach. And actually, the funny thing was, she was a life coach, and I was listening to her podcast. But she happened to also be a weight loss coach. And I wasn't looking for weight loss, mind you. But based on her podcast and the things she was saying, I'm like, I'm going to try some of these things that she's talking about. And lo and behold, yeah, lo and behold, I lost the weight. So I kind of take that approach now with my clients. It's like, what was it that I was looking for? What made the difference? Because really it wasn't hard. I said, I don't want to be hungry. I said, I had done a weight loss program before where it was like 12 weeks and it was high intensity, a lot of exercise. And I said, I was like counting the days until that program was over with. I was like, I do not want to go through that. And sure enough, as soon as it was over, I went and gained all the weight back. So I've kind of seen that.
What do they say? Diets don't work, which is so true, right?
Yeah,
Restriction doesn't work.
Well, diets do work, but you got to stay on them.
That's interesting.
And so, yeah, that's really
right.
What kind of made.
I think when we say, I'm sorry. I think when we say diet, it seems like a bad word. Whereas if we say just changing your eating habits. And because I think people only think that diet means restriction.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where I find a lot of people are hesitating. It's like, another diet. It means they're going to have to suffer. Oh my goodness. Right. Yeah. So it makes sense. What you did is you came out looking at what kind of lifestyle you want, what kind of, nourishment do you want, which was such a wonderful thing.
I was focused on what I want, not what I don't want.
Exactly. Makes a big difference, right? When you're working with your clients, that you hold their want in your arms and say, okay, I'm holding that. So we're not going to let you go the other way, right? So it sounds like you have a wonderful way with your clients. Oh, that's so cool. So do you have groups and groups one-on-one? How is your work structured?
Yeah. I just started a group because I do one-on-one predominantly, but I started a group because I wanted to incorporate the positive intelligence. That's the program that I completed with Shirzad Shameen. And what I like about it is that it focuses on the positivity, because like you said, there is so much negativity, so much hatred almost, like people talk the things that we say about our bodies is often very unkind. And I just remember this one client that I had, she'd just given birth to a beautiful baby. Like the baby would come on the Zoom calls with us, And I remember she was comparing herself to her neighbor. She's like, oh, my neighbor lost all their weight. They gave birth around the same time. My neighbor gave birth right away. And, my heart was hurting, and I said, there's a book I read by Maria Nemeth, and she gives this analogy where, imagine you and your body go to the counselor's office. And so then you're relaying all the things to the counselor, what you don't like about your body. And then she asked, what would your body say? What would your body say that you think about it? Yeah. And I think that really struck her, because she's like, wow, yeah. Oh, I don't say nice things about my body. And then I thought too, she had a little boy, but little girls watch their moms like nobody's business, and boys probably do too, but they internalize that. And they don't see the difference between your body and their body until they're much older. So if they see you saying negative things about your body, and then they start to say the same thing. And so what I really wanted to, do in the group is just really expose them to this positive intelligence. Talks about our saboteurs, about our judge, about our critic. And now I found something about this inner child, this inner child work.
Oh, that's real fun stuff.
Yeah. And so it's really started, they're coming, it's all coming together. Which makes sense that we're so critical of ourselves. I said, imagine your body just gave birth to this beautiful baby boy. And now you're beating it up because it's not losing weight fast enough. So things like that. I think that's why I probably went into forensics.
Isn't that nice? Like you
Yeah. It's sometimes it's overwhelming. My emotions overwhelming. That's why I do emotional eating because I get so emotional.
Well, there you go. There's the other side of the coin. Um, but I'm wondering, like, do you work with certain age or just is it mostly women? Um, because here postpartum people really could benefit, as you just mentioned. That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't specifically. I was actually working for another coach who coaches doctors, so that was really fun for me. And so yeah, she had all ages and I have all ages too, but I do
Very good.
I do. I mean, I think I draw a lot of people that are similar to me. So I do get doctors and people in healthcare. And most of them they already had their children or they have older children or they're older. But again, I don't necessarily advertise a particular age. And actually, I just had a client. She's a nurse practitioner and she was just starting out. So she's in her 20s. So yeah. But that just happened like that. And, that I had that client, and it was nice actually because I didn't always know who was coming, so that was actually interesting.
It
But,
is nice. And it's interesting how we attract people like ourselves, which is
absolutely.
wonderful. And for you to be able to share with them that you truly do understand where they're coming from, that's a gift in itself that you give them. That is awesome. That is awesome. And I know that you have, we could talk all day because I love what you're doing. I really do. And you're making such a difference, especially with the positive intelligence. And there's nothing better than to have that in your pocket, right?
Absolutely.
But I know you're going to give our viewers and listeners a little gift, a little free gift. If you could just tell us what that is. And of course, there'll be other things coming from you and links and whatnot. Those will all be in the show notes. But if you want to tell us a little bit about what you're offering for free.
Yeah. It's a freebie PDF and just some tips that you can hang up on your refrigerator about different things you can do to help your weight loss. The small things like maybe choosing a smaller plate. If we normally have this desire to see our plate full. So if you make the plate a little bit smaller, or drinking water, simple things that we already do on a regular basis, but it's just small things that we can include that will still help us along in our journey. So yeah, just some tips of little things that you can do that don't break the bank.
Yeah, but those are the tips that they do and they remember. And, I think it's delightful that you have that kind of a sheet that they can sort of look at and say, oh, that sounds like a cool idea. Like put your fork down and don't touch it till you're done swallowing. It's great. It's great. Well, I thank you so much. Oh, this is such an honor and a pleasure to be able to introduce you to the summit. And I'm sure you're going to change a lot of lives.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Peggy. And again, thank you for this platform and thank you for the interview. Thank you for the questions, the very thought-provoking questions. And yes, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Professional Women's Wellness Podcast. If you would like to attend training sessions by our amazing podcast guests and have a chance to connect, join the Professional Women's Wellness newsletter. For more details and to sign up, scan the QR code or click the link in the description. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast. Each week, we will select a reviewer who will receive free access to my $197 course, Goodbye Night Bites, a 30-day journey to stop emotional eating at night.
Please subscribe to get notifications of future episodes.